Welcome into Pigskin Perspectives. It is Sunday night as this is being recorded, so we're not going to do any NFL today. That will be on Tuesday. We'll recap everything that's happened today, everything that happened Thursday, everything that's going to happen tomorrow. We'll do that on Tuesday. Figured we'd do a college football recap here on Sunday, kind of have digested all the results, come up with some takes from that. We'll take a look back at this weekend, take a look at the AP poll that came out earlier today, do some winners and losers, and a lot more coming throughout this show. So let's just get straight into it. Let's take a look back on those 6 marquee matchups I said were there for this week. First one was Colorado playing host to Nebraska. Colorado wins this game 36-14. And honestly, the scoreline doesn't really tell the full story because Nebraska just almost was never in this game. Even though that is quite a defeat, Nebraska still wasn't that close, really. Deion Sanders puts on another show-stopping performance as a head coach. Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, another great game for those two. People still doubting Colorado, including myself. I mean, yes, Nebraska's somewhat I kind of feel like Nebraska's on the same level as TCU this year. I don't really know. They got Colorado State next week. Colorado does. You're not going to find anything out from that. They're going to put up probably 40 or 50 on Colorado State. Then they get into Pac-12 play. They play Oregon, I believe, first, and then it's USC to close out September. Those are going to be 2 crucial games for them. We'll actually get an idea of what this team actually looks like because it could get ugly fast for them. I don't think it will, but who knows. But they put on another great performance this time at home in Boulder. Crowd was electric, and they get a win against one of their biggest rivals, if not their biggest rival, who they obviously don't face as much anymore because of conference realignment, but they now have a 4-game winning streak against them. The last time they won was the last time they played in actual conference play, Nebraska. So big win for Colorado. They moved to 2-0. One more thing on Colorado. I'm seeing a lot of the takes already. Oh, this team went 1-11 last year. Now they're 2-0. Stop it. Stop it. This is a completely different team than what the Colorado team that went 1-11 last year looked like. There are maybe 5-6 players that are still on this roster, or with an influential role in this roster, I should say. They're from this team that went 1-11. Deion Sanders brought in almost a brand new team, and this is not the same team that went 1-11. So, yes, technically, the brand Colorado football went 1-11 last year. These players did not go 1-11. So, I really hate that take because like you're trying to make something look like Deion Sanders is a master worker. He brought in his own players, and that's why they are here right now. And that's going to be that rant for now. We move on to the second game. Ole Miss was traveling to New Orleans to face off against Tulane. They come out with the 37-20 victory. The biggest story coming out of this game, though, was Michael Pratt, the quarterback for Tulane, did not play in this game. It probably would have made a difference if he played. It probably would have been a closer game, even though it was close for most of the game. Ole Miss pulled away in the fourth, but yeah, if Michael Pratt played in this game, I feel like it would have been a much different story we're talking about. We could potentially be talking about Ole Miss losing this game, but they didn't. They played who was in front of them, and they got the 17-point victory against Tulane on the road. Lane Train keeps rolling. Texas A&M traveled down to Miami. It was going to be interesting to see if they could bounce or continue that streak that they started last week in a great performance in week 1 for them under their new offensive coordinator, Bobby Petrino, with Jimbo Fisher. It was going to be interesting to see if they could, keep that train rolling. Well, They couldn't. Miami wins this game 48-33. It was quite a disappointing performance for Texas A&M. They kept it close for about a half, and everything fell apart after that. It started to look like a Texas A&M team of old, and Miami just put the foot on the gas and made sure that Texas A&M had no chance of coming back in this game. So Miami walks away with the win. Texas A&M starting to maybe fall down that road that they usually do. I mean, we'll see, but it's starting to, devolve that way. Oregon, like we said, traveled to Lubbock to face off against Texas Tech. They come out with the 38-30 win. It was a close one, even closer than the score says, because there was a pick six with 30 seconds left that Oregon scored, which covered the game for them. So they did cover technically, and all that matters is the points at the end. So that was a bad beat for Texas A&M, or Texas Tech, I should say. But Oregon walked away with win. Not a dominating performance like they had last week against Portland State. Texas Tech didn't look like the team that lost in Laramie to Wyoming. I think we've kind of found a common ground for those two teams, and should be quite interesting to see how these teams develop down the road. Oregon has Hawaii coming up this week, and then they have that Colorado game in 2 weeks. So that is going to be a crucial game for both sides, really, to see where they are at, really, in college football right now. The big game of the weekend, and one of the biggest stories coming out of college football this Sunday, Texas travels into Tuscaloosa and takes down Alabama 34-24, which people are saying, well, this is the beginning of the changing of the guard. Alabama's finally falling. And no, stop it. That's not what's happening here. I don't think Alabama truly has an outstanding quarterback right now, and I think that's hurting their play a lot. I know this year they wanted to run the ball more. They didn't really do that in this game, but hey, whatever. But like I said, I think it's quarterbacking play for Alabama that is hurting them the most. Jalen Milroe, his 2 interceptions last night were just bad. His 2 touchdowns, though, they were quite good. The thing with Milroe is he can look like the absolute worst quarterback in the world on one play, or 2 plays, or 3 plays. That's what it seems to be. It seems to be 1 to 3 plays. And then he has just an absolutely outstanding throw that, ends up in big yards. And he looks like, the next Nick Saban prodigy quarterback. If he can fix those mistakes, he's going to be really good. He's not there right now. And I don't know how Alabama fixes him quickly, I guess I would say. But Quinn Ewers, huge game for him with Texas at quarterback. Obviously, there was a decent amount of pressure on him coming into this season, especially with Arch Manning coming in as a recruit. If things went wrong with Quinn Ewers, the name of Manning would be called. But he puts on an outstanding performance at Alabama, comes away with the victory. And Texas, I'm not going to say that Texas is back, but they certainly look to be on the road to being back. I'll put it that way. They looked really good. They still have a Big 12 schedule ahead of them. Anything can really happen there. I'm going to be interested to see how they play against the Big 12 this year, but that showing against Alabama, man, do they look good right now. And the final marquee game I did mention was the final matchup of these two rivals for now. It is Stanford and USC, and USC just absolutely ran away with this game. Pac-12 on Pac-12 crime. 56-10 the final score. And USC barely scored in the second half. They were up 49-3, I think, going into halftime. Just absolutely insane numbers. Nothing really you can take away from that except, USC's offense, very good. That is quite the offense that Lincoln Riley has running in LA right now. Obviously, got to see if they can keep it up within the Pac-12 schedule. There's still a lot of questions to be answered, though, on the defensive side, I think, because, Stanford's not the toughest test. So they got a few marquee games coming up, and we'll definitely find out more about them later in this season. So given that, might as well move on to the AP poll. This was released at 2 p.m. today. So we'll take a look at these results. I'll mention the teams if I, thought highly of their games this weekend. And I did notice some of these scores on here are not right. Like they're from last week for some reason. I don't know why, but let's just take a look at these. So Georgia still sits at 1 after a 45-3 victory against Ball State. Carson Beck looks good at quarterback again, but it's Ball State, so can't really take away much from that game. Michigan stays at 2. They got the win against UNLV 35-7. Another game where they held a shutout for 3 quarters, and then, fourth quarter when you're playing your fifth strings, UNLV got a touchdown. Ends up helping them cover, but you can't really tell anything right now with these non-conference games. I'd even say once Michigan gets into conference play, we'll find out what they are, but I think they'll just be as good in conference play. It's really not going to be a challenge until probably Penn State or Ohio State, and they might win those games, honestly. This team does look quite good right now. They're relying too much on the pass with J.J. McCarthy, though. I think that might come back to haunt them at some point. So if I'm a Michigan fan, I'd be a little bit worried about how much they're relying on the arm of J.J. McCarthy. Florida State moves up to 3. It says that they played LSU this week. That was obviously last week. They beat Southern Miss this week in a complete beatdown. So they move up to 3. Moving up 7 spots to 4 is Texas after that huge win against Alabama. We kind of already talked about them. At 5, USC moves up 1 spot. They obviously, it says here that they played Nevada. That didn't happen. We just recapped their game against Stanford. Quite a interesting performance from them. Moving down a spot once again. They moved down a spot last week. They moved down a spot this week because they really haven't completely performed their best, I would say, these first 2 weeks. Ohio State, they get a 35-7 victory against Youngstown State. Kind of would have expected more points, but here we are. I thought Kyle McCord had a better game than he did against Indiana. Marvin Harrison Jr. actually caught some touchdown passes in this game. Like I said last week, he was kind of just seemed like he wasn't even there. So he gets his first 2 touchdown passes of the year, and Ohio State get the victory against the Penguins. Penn State is at 7. They got a victory over Delaware. Washington sits at 8. They got a win over Tulsa. Notre Dame moves up a spot to 9. They get the win over NC State in a game that had a long weather delay. But I think Notre Dame really showed that they are a very real contender for the college football playoff right now, I think. Moving down 7 spots to 10, that is Alabama. We kind of already talked about their game also. Moving down 2 spots to 11 is Tennessee. They get the win against Austin Peay, but it was a 30-13 final score. Little bit worrying. I would have expected Tennessee to really run up the score in this game, and they just couldn't get it going. So I don't know what this Tennessee team. Joe Milton didn't look outstanding in this game. I'm a little bit worried about that. I don't think Tennessee is going to be as good as they were last year, and I think they've been a little bit overranked this year. Utah traveled down to Waco. They came out with the 20-13 victory against Baylor, so they stay at 12. We already talked about Oregon's victory at Texas Tech. They stay at 13. LSU, it says that they played Florida State, but they did not. They played Grambling State, I believe. They got the victory there quite easily. 15 continues to be Kansas State. They got the victory against Troy in a 42-13, just absolute beatdown. I figured Troy would kind of put up a fight in this game. They seem like they're good enough to put up a fight in that game, not to win it, but put up a fight. They just didn't do that. I almost said Colorado there. We almost skipped over two teams. At 16 is Oregon State. They got the victory, I believe, against Cal Poly. It says San Jose State there, but I'm pretty sure it was Cal Poly. At 17, Ole Miss move up 3 spots with that win over at the time, ranked Tulane. Colorado moves up 4 spots to 18 with their win over Nebraska. Oklahoma moves down a spot after their unconvincing win against SMU. That was a rough game for Oklahoma. I expected it to be much more high scoring, and it wasn't, so that was quite shocking to me. At 20, moving down 3 spots is North Carolina. They barely sneaked past Appalachian State in double overtime, 40-34. They should not have won that game, but they pull it off in double overtime somehow. Duke stays at 21 after a 42-7 victory, I should say, over Lafayette. Miami make their debut in the rankings with their win over Texas A&M. Washington State makes their debut in the rankings after their victory over Wisconsin. Big victory in the Palouse. They win the home-and-home series because they won against Wisconsin at Camp Randall last year. They win at Washington State this year. So Washington State makes their debut here in the AP poll. UCLA makes the debut in the AP poll for this season. They defeat San Diego State 35-10 on the road at the Snapdragon Stadium. And finally at 25, it is Iowa after their win in the in-state battle between Iowa and Iowa State. They win 20-13. And then the others receiving votes were Clemson, Arkansas, TCU, Kansas, Tulane, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Mississippi State, Minnesota, Cincinnati, Fresno State, Wyoming, Oklahoma State, Maryland, and James Madison. So given that, we'll move on here to our biggest winners and losers of week 2. So just like last week, I'll pick 3 winners. And it can be a team, it can be a player, it can be an offensive line, defensive unit, offensive unit. It can be anything. And I'll do the same for the losers. I'll pick 3 of them. So we'll start out with the first winner. It's a player I already mentioned in this show. It's Quinn Ewers. He arrived at Texas as one of the most decorated recruits, even though he went to Ohio State for a year, but that was basically just to get NIL money from the understanding that I got. Transfers to Texas. He's still considered one of the highest recruited players in Texas history at quarterback. And he just had a game. He was on that trajectory last year against Alabama at Darrell K. Royal Stadium in Austin. But the injury kind of derailed that, and then that ended up derailing his season. But this win for him, I think, is absolutely huge. That was an absolutely amazing performance from the Longhorns quarterback. Now, the loser, I'm going with Texas' biggest rival, Texas A&M. You can't be losing like that to Miami. That was just absolutely... With the amount of money that has been spent on Texas A&M football between NIL, getting recruits, coaches, you shouldn't be doing that against Miami. That was just absolutely disgusting. They got absolutely obliterated. That the game was never close. The Aggies got 2 touchdowns, I believe, off of muffed punts. And that's just not good enough on the offensive side of the ball. That's just absolutely disgusting. We'll go another winner. I'm going to say it's got to be Colorado, I would think, because they're doing what some people expected, a lot of people didn't expect. They're doing it. I mean, they still got challenges ahead of them. It's going to be interesting to watch because I think those games are really going to be telling. And they haven't got to the hardest part of their schedule yet, basically. Another loser, I'm going with a whole conference here. I'm going with the SEC. We have to have a conversation here. They are currently 1-5 this year, I believe is the stat. 1-5 against P5 opponents. And the one win was, or it might be 2-5 because Mississippi State did get the win against Arizona this weekend. But the other win was Tennessee against Virginia. This is not good for a conference that, considers themselves, it just means more, basically. I mean, Tennessee looked awful this weekend against Austin Peay. Arkansas struggled with Kent State. Middle Tennessee, they just came out of nowhere, they played Alabama okay last week. They played Missouri this week. They end up having a chance to win the game. Missouri ends up sneaking out with the win. But, I mean, this is just ugly football right now from the SEC. It just looked absolutely disgusting. Last winner I'll go with Notre Dame. Like I said, they're playing right now like a potential playoff team, which I think they're going to be able to sneak in. I think their schedule is very favorable for that. Really, the only chance right now, I think, at a loss is going to be the USC game. But given that that is in South Bend, I think Notre Dame has a better shot of winning that game. We'll see. That game's not until mid-October, I think. But a lot of things can change. A lot of things can change in football in a month and a half, basically. And these two teams could be looking completely different by that point. My last loser, and that's going to move me on to our final topic of tonight, is Michigan State football. Let's just get into this. Michigan State has suspended Mel Tucker, head coach, as a sexual assault or one of those. Investigation continues. It's a Title IX investigation. It came out right around 12:30 this morning. I was getting ready to fall asleep, get a buzz on the phone, and it's from ESPN. Mel Tucker's under a sexual misconduct investigation. So I'm like, okay, this isn't good. Let's go look up the details. Open up the ESPN article. Really nothing in it. I'm like, okay, we'll figure this out sometime. Then it was, just scrolling. Because now I'm like, there's got to be some information coming. If it's not going to be ESPN, another publication is going to do it. Well, here we go. Another publication does it. It is, I believe it was USA Today. Turns out it was, it was something. So the story is with the whole Mel Tucker investigation, as I attempt to, because I do want to get all the details correct here. I'm working on pulling up the official article here. But just as I work on that, he's been suspended without pay until this investigation is concluded. This investigation is supposed to be wrapped up by the beginning of October. His hearing's supposed to be during the Michigan State bye week. The belief is that it's going to end up with termination of contract with cause, so he doesn't have to get paid the $70-ish million that he has left on his contract. So I'm expecting that coming down the pipeline. So getting into this, it's a sexual harassment lawsuit, technically, within the Title IX violation clearinghouse, whatever you want to call it. So it was Brenda Tracy, who is a rape survivor. I should say this, the details coming out of this might be impactful to some, so feel free to skip this if you don't want to hear this. Just that this will be the end of the episode, so we'll see on Tuesday for the next episode. But if you want to stay, I just wanted to give that disclaimer out there. So Brenda Tracy is a rape survivor. She's a big activist. She's been with a lot of football teams doing like training of, how to be a decent human being, basically. I remember she was the captain of the spring game last year for Michigan State. So there was a somewhat relationship there, I guess I would say, between professional relationship between Tucker and Tracy. So it ends up turning out that I don't even know how this works out, but she ends up making allegations to, I believe it was the university. I don't think she went anywhere else. She made allegations to the university that, it would have been bad for her to keep her story silent about this. So she brought it up to the university in December. That should be mentioned. She brought this up in December. This investigation apparently didn't start till June. And now we're here. And now it's just coming out, and now he's getting suspended. Which that's a completely different story that we can maybe go down in a few minutes here. But so the way it's working out, she makes this claim because apparently Tucker sexually harassed her, I guess I would say is the best term for it, on a phone call that Tucker has already said that he admits to, but he believes that instead it was consensual, which again, you've admitted to it. Knowing the classes of like law and ethics, it's very hard to prove that it was consensual. So you just basically screwed yourself, because unless you have hard evidence, which if there's hard evidence, there's hard evidence, and that this thing could go downhill really fast. But yeah, so now this comes out like at 12:30. It's 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, so a lot of people are asleep. This really gained steam this morning. Press conference called 5 p.m. with the president and the athletic director. They announced he's suspended indefinitely without pay. Like I said, I'm expecting this to end up being termination. I don't see Mel Tucker coming back from this. And yeah, so Michigan State, a very, very big loser this weekend. I don't know what's next for this, because this is just all bad, all like terrible. Just when I first saw this, I'm like, why is this coming out now, basically? And then obviously reading into it, understandable why it's coming out now, because with Title IX investigations, everything's basically has to stay confidential until the accuser wants to bring it out. And that's what obviously happened here. I mean, they've been saying a lot of people in the athletic department were quite shocked by this last night and this morning. So, I mean, according to the athletic department, they didn't know any details of this until this report came out from the USA Today. They had a lot of evidence in it. We'll be honest, had quite a ton of evidence. And I don't know. The biggest thing for me, this complaint came in late December. I think they said the investigation somewhat started in June, July, somewhere around there. And it's coming out now, obviously. This is a university that has done not the right thing on this type of stuff a lot in the last few years, which seeing this come out, I'm like, here we go again, because Michigan State continually cannot do anything right. And I'll call them out for that. I mean, I'm an alumni. They cannot get anything right doing this stuff. Yes, should this have been something we known back, before the season started? Probably. Is MSU technically following the protocols here with a Title IX violation, given that they didn't basically know anything that happened until this report came out? Yes, they're technically following the guidelines here. But this is such a tough situation, because this is just so difficult because there's so many moving pieces here. The only thing that's really not moving right now is the fact that he won't be on the sidelines this weekend or next weekend or the weekend after that. But this team, it's something this team couldn't have used right now. It's come at the worst time. Not that there's ever a good time for this, let's be honest. But if these allegations turn out to be true, 100% should be long gone from this program, which, like I said, seems like we're headed down that path. And just another dark day for this university in what seems to be, who knows, it seems to be in the fifth, sixth dark day in the past 5 years, it seems. It seems like every year at least one bad thing seems to go wrong at MSU, and that just makes everything quite worse. This year it seems to be two things. And, it's just quite very tough. Obviously, as an alumni, just another embarrassing moment for the university. And I am just, it's sad. It's really sad. But like I said, if all these allegations are true, should 100% be gone. Now, then we get into the part where, well, what if we get proof that there's consent, basically? Okay, sure. Title IX clears everything. Technically didn't do anything wrong. There's consent, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now you have a head coach that has admitted on the record that he, technically, yes, cheated on his wife. He did immoral things on company. I believe it was with a company phone, with a company vendor, obviously, because she was getting paid by the university, technically. And you still want that person to be the somewhat face of your university and the person that is, helping young men ages 18 to 22 or 23, move on either into professional football or into professional life. It doesn't look good either way, which is why I think after this Title IX hearing, as I hit the microphone there, after this Title IX hearing, it's going to be termination with cause. I'm sure he's going to end up suing the university, trying to get his money back. And it's just going to get really nasty from there. And I'm not looking forward to it as an alumni. It's just going to get quite messy, and it's such a shame because this university can't do anything right, and I'm not surprised with the leadership that it seems to have. They can never get anything right. So given that, I feel like that should just wrap up the show. Didn't really want to end it on a downer like that, but it had to be mentioned. It's the biggest story in college football today is that a coach that won 11 games 2 years ago got a $90 million extension over 9 years, so he's getting paid $10 million a year, is most likely getting fired for cause. So that is going to be it for today. Like I said, we will be back on Tuesday for another Pigskin Perspectives recapping NFL Week 1. Lot of good results there. Looking forward to that. Hopefully you tune in. Thank you so much for watching. If you just stumble across this video, like, subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. And we will be back on Tuesday for another episode of Pigskin Perspectives.